This ain't a team that's having fist fights on the sidelines. This ain't some clown show organization or something else, okay? You talk about the foundation built. You talk about things the toughest thing to change in a team, the toughest thing to change in a club is the way people think. But I guarantee you this, those men are going to walk in on Wednesday and be ready to roll. We're going to practice hard on Wednesday, we're going to practice hard on Thursday, we're going to practice hard on Friday, okay? And we're going to play for each other on the field next week. If we don't play well, every fan has a right to boo my ass out of the stadium. You got that? That don't bother me. I don't want it. I don't think anyone wants to get booed, okay? But the reality is, that's all right. All right, but I'll tell you right now, all right, if you're in the damn building, you walk on through our locker room, you ain't seeing that crap you saw before. All right? You ain't seeing guys right now planning vacations. You ain't seeing golf clubs in front of players' locker. You ain't seeing that stuff. I can tell you we got more players here who are going to be free agents next year, all right, who are in my office every day begging to come back. I know that. Okay, I know that. Or players that we coached last year that still call me twice a week talking about, how much they wish they were still here even though they're getting paid more somewhere else.
That was a fascinating campaign speech, an 11.5-minute campaign speech from Joe Judge. It's almost like he was like, hey, it might be bad now, but it's better than it was before, or better than the other guy.
Yeah, is that the argument? Right?
It feels like it. It feels like it. And whenever they're practicing hard, clearly ain't working, Charles Robinson, when you go out and you have, -10 passing yards? Fewest since Ryan Leaf last century. The crazy thing is they were going up against an organization whose own coach appears to be headed out the door in Matt Nagy in Chicago. A couple of weeks ago, we saw some reporting, and it's probably agents or whatever, saying that Gettleman might be gone, but Judge and Daniel Jones are safe. How can the Giants continue on the way they're being embarrassed week in and week out under Joe Judge? He's got to be firmly on the hot seat, right, Charles?
First, I want to know whose golf clubs were in front of their locker room. like seriously?
Well, who's calling?
Golden Tate.
Who made more money being like, I really want to be? I really want to be back.
It was
with
Golden
you guys.
Tate. It was Golden Tate's clubs. Yeah, it was Golden Tate.
Oh, okay. But do we know who called? Do we know the player? I saw Tomlinson.
I don't know who called.
Speculated it was Tomlinson. You know who called?
It's Joe Judge's agent. It's Joe Judge's agent disguising his voice. Joe,
okay.
I really wish I wouldn't have left. I'd like to come back. Can we come back? I hate where I am now and all this extra money I'm making. I want to be there for when Mike Glennon throws 11 passes. Mike Glennon
has one completion past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, two interceptions.
Come on.
Joe, can you come? Maybe Antonio Brown? I don't know. I don't know who's begging to get into the Giants, let alone who's there now begging for a contract extension. I thought it was an interesting use of language. Look, I think so. The reason why he's not on the hot seat is because since the Tom Coughlin ending, they've gone through two coaches where it was a quick turn, 2 years. They did the 2-year plan twice, didn't work, and bailed. And here we are again, and I think you have John Mara sitting there going, are we going to do this again? We're just going to keep firing guys every 2 years, because it doesn't work? Or are we going to, grit our teeth and see if maybe year 3 is when this turns the corner? It was bizarre. It was definitely bizarre. I mean, it's coaches all kind of went out of their minds. It wasn't just Antonio Brown who had a moment on Sunday. I mean, you had Mike Zimmer basically ending Kellen Mond. It was like
you want to see him? No, not particularly.
Bro,
see him every day. I'm good.
He's been in the league 8 months. Okay, like you just straight up are like, I see enough of that.
I know
guy.
what we have here.
Yeah, I know we took him 60, with the 66th pick in the draft, but
oh my God,
we're done. We're done on Kellen Mond. But I really do. I think it's just ownership sitting there going, we can't keep repeating this this 2-year experience and expect the results to change. So I do. I think that insulates them a little bit. And again, there are a variety of injuries and, everybody's kind of gone through their different things.
Sure.
I don't think it's anything beyond them just trying to actually stick with something a little bit longer.
Okay, and it's in the interest of time, I'm gonna combine a handful of other situations, and if you could answer them as quickly as you can. But I'm a cheat and ask you about 3 other situations because it's similar. If they're going to saddle the next GM with this head coach and quarterback, similar to what Jacksonville is doing with Trent Baalke with the next coach. So you got Jacksonville looking for a coach with Trent Baalke remaining as GM. You have Chicago. I mean, look, Matt Nagy has a better record when he's not starting Justin Fields for whatever that's worth. But he seems to be on the way out, we would think. And then last but not least, we know how impatient David Tepper is in Carolina, and it gets worse and worse for Matt Rule by the week. So if you can kind of give us your treetop view of the coaching carousel, because this time a week from now, we'll probably have some vacancies, quite a few vacancies, and maybe some surprises at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, well, Jacksonville, first and foremost, they have a Trent Baalke problem, like they do. When you talk to people around the league, and this is really going all the way back to San Francisco, everybody knows how it ended with Trent Baalke in San Francisco with a number of different individuals, whether it's Jim Harbaugh, Chip Kelly, how the year of Jim Tom Sula went. I think that people who are going to or would be prospects for the Jacksonville job are being warned because they're like, hey, look, he clearly is, for lack of a better term, he's, some guys think he's like a snitch for ownership because he comes in under Doug Marrone, lasts obviously when the Doug Marrone clean out happens. Now he's lasted beyond Urban Meyer and he's going to be involved moving forward. Well, that only usually happens if someone is clearly like the owner guy. And I'm not, all GMs in some sense are the owner's guy. But you can't kind of feel like as a head coach, you're walking into a scenario and there's this separation between you and the GM you're supposed to work with. So it's the Trent Baalke thing. We'll see how it shakes out. It's going to be interesting to see who will actually take that job. The next one you mentioned, what I already lost my train of thought. Who was the second one you mentioned?
Chicago.
Is
Nagy out? Simple and plain.
Yeah,
he's out.
No, I think he's out. I think I think they've seen the ups and downs with him, and I don't think there's anything that's convinced them to suddenly reverse course. So I don't see him. Right. It's going to be about Justin Fields. They're going to try and find someone who's ready to buy in and be the 10-year link with Justin Fields. Carolina's interesting. Yeah, Carolina's it's interesting because from what I was told, the indication in the building prior to Sunday was Matt's going to be okay. They're going to go into year 3 with Matt. Matt's going to be the coach for year 3. I think what's interesting is they need to get out. Everybody in the building needs to kind of get on the same page there. And I mean, the owner, the general manager, and Matt Rule have to decide on what exactly is the build because they're going to go into this offseason, and I think there's some differing viewpoints on the quarterback situation there. I think some people in the building are like, hey, we need to go swing for the fences and go get a huge quarterback. Doesn't matter that we owe Sam Darnold nearly $19 million. Gotta go sell out whatever we can to land a quarterback. And then I think you have other people in the building who are sitting there saying, no, that's not how we can't just blow it out completely to resolve one position. We have to continue to build around it. It's not great, it's kind of a mess in Carolina right now. And either David Tepper is going to be patient and try to everybody kind of have a coming together, meeting in the offseason and get everybody on the same page, or he's going to have to break it all up. And I would suppose that Scott Fitterer would survive, and Scott Fitterer then chooses who the next coach is.
Now, Charles, I ask you this knowing that the so-called hot guy is not always the right guy. I know Joe Judge a couple of years ago was a hot guy. It was Mississippi State, I think it was, and the Giants. And then Matt Rule was a hot guy because it was Carolina and the Giants. Okay, so sometimes that hot guy, after a couple of years, you're looking to move on to somebody else. Matt Nagy was a hot guy once upon a time. Now, all that being said, who's the hot guy going into the 2022 coaching draft? All right, who's that guy that everybody wants?
Interestingly enough, I think that I think there is a search for people who have been in the NFL, had a track record of success, and they feel like maybe are deserving of a second shot. And that's kind of where we're at. We went into this whole, everybody's going to hire whoever's connected to Sean McVay. anybody who's in their 30s and hot right now. But now, okay, I'll give you a good example, like Doug Peterson. A lot of people are talking about Doug Peterson. And what I think is interesting about it is one of the coaches who is helping Doug Peterson is Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy going through the rough first season with Chicago, kind of righting it this year. I know there was some timeout issues and there continues to be timeout issues, but I think that you have some owners who are sitting there going, maybe we need to lean more into a proven commodity. And Doug Peterson did do some really good things in Philadelphia. But I do think the question that you have people asking themselves about Doug Peterson is, was this Doug Peterson's success or was it Frank Reich's success? Because Frank Reich has obviously gone into Indianapolis and done really good things. But I mean, for lack of a better, I hate to say it, but Doug Peterson might actually be someone that a number of teams are interested in bringing in. Ron Rivera helps him too. I think that the NFL saw the trend of going out and grabbing a bunch of, less than proven commodities, and now we're sort of seeing a cycle where some of the other individuals who have had success and a track record as a head coach might get another look. Jim Caldwell's another one. There's somebody I'm leaving off of. Dan Quinn obviously has already been asked by the Jacksonville Jaguars. People who have had some success as a head coach are going to be hot.
There have been some tweaks to the Rooney Rule for general managers and head coaches. The Lions got draft pick compensation because they hired Brad Holmes. Are we going to be talking about yet another tweak to the Rooney Rule when this cycle is over? Or do you think actually some people will look at a black and want to hire a black? I mean, listen, we're okay. We're not toxic. We know football. Will anybody, in all seriousness, will anybody look at African-American head coaches and say, that's my guy? Whether we're talking about Raheem Morris, whether we're talking about Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles, right. Eric Bieniemy. Are we going to have it this year?
Yeah, Bowles, that's another one that I left off with some head coaching experience that I think will be, he'll get some at least a few interviews. Look, I think you want me to cape for the league here? Like I can't promise anything.
No.
Like I keep no, I know you don't. I'm being facetious when I say that, but I mean, like I keep thinking like, okay, this is, as you said, like Leftwich, should Byron Leftwich be a top candidate for a few jobs? Yeah, absolutely. I think he's proven, he's made his bones working with Tom Brady, and he's learned a lot from Bruce Arians. And if I were a team that was looking for a coach on the younger side to come in and let me put him in place with my quarterback and let the two guys grow together and move forward, I think Byron Leftwich would be a hell of an option for you. Eric Bieniemy, we've gone through this process with Eric Bieniemy. I don't know, I would love to say that all of a sudden the league's going to turn on a dime and we're going to see some diverse hires, but we are where we are. The numbers just continue to whittle. And as you said, is there going to be another tweak? I think like every offseason, it's something that they're going to have to look at. But you tell me, Michael, I will ask you, what do you think has changed? Tell me, what do you think has changed in the matrix to suddenly really, do we think draft pick compensation is the change? That to me is sort of an insulting change. That's not like, hey, we'll give you some. Yeah,
should be incentivized to have a diverse talent pool.
Congratulations, you opened a bank account. Here's a toaster. Like, what's the? I mean,
right. Here's a cookie for doing the right. Here's a cookie for doing the right thing. No, 100%. So again, I'm gonna do this again with you. In the interest of time, I'm trying to combine. There's so much going on, and it's been so long since we talked to you. I'm gonna try to combine two things and see if I can get away with it. You can only pick one, but they both said the right things. More likely to still be with their teams next season, Rodgers or Russell Wilson?
Rodgers. No question. I don't think there's any question, Rodgers. I think there are a couple of things. Rodgers has come out and said positive things about communication, okay, which is huge. Like he wouldn't, trust me, he's never going to say anything positive about the communication unless he's feeling better about that. And I think Devontae Adams, they're letting it be known that he's not getting out of our building. Like if we're going to have to franchise him, we're going to have to franchise him, but we're not going to lose this guy. that is a huge step in Rodgers' direction. But, there's some heavy lifting to do, because to keep Davante Adams in the fold and solve kind of being up against the salary cap here, they're going to have to sign Rodgers to a big deal, and they're going to have to play money manager to structure it and keep themselves competitive on the field. Plus, he's playing at a really high level. He seems very happy now. The one thing that I would say is it can change. They have been in the NFC Championship game, and on the other side of those last 2 years, they were in the NFC title game. There were bad feelings. It was like, hey, they were all really happy to get there, and then once they lost it, there's a lot of griping. That can happen again. So I think Rodgers. Real quick about Russell. I think that what was there, what existed last year with Russell going into the offseason, never really resolved itself. I truly believe
he gave a list. His agent publicly gave a list. Come back. The writing's been on the wall.
At one point, he disparaged his offensive line, publicly, on the record. I'm like, oh my God, you can't do that. I just think that, it hasn't resolved itself. And here's the thing. There is going to be a robust market for him. So John Schneider he's got to answer 2 questions. Number one, what is the value out there? It's going to be very high. I mean, we're talking you might get 3 first-round picks and more for Russell Wilson from a team. And then number 2, it's who do we replace him with? And that second one is really important, because you can't just go, well, we're just rolling the dice with Geno Smith now, because you have to have a plan post Russell Wilson.
What's so interesting? I was going to ask you something else, but you talk about Russell Wilson and you talk about the compensation. It reminded me of a guy that we haven't mentioned in about a month and a half, and that's Deshaun Watson. And it's amazing, and this is really tough, particularly for younger people. I'm not talking about younger quarterbacks, younger athletes, just younger people, that the train continues to move with or without you, and it can be very humbling. We haven't mentioned Deshaun Watson. What's his story going to be for 2022? Is he going to be the quarterback for the Texans now that this whole thing is blown over, or is that bridge just destroyed and he's going somewhere else?
He's definitely. I mean, there's no question. They're talking about Davis Mills in the building. They feel very good heading into this offseason, because they're sitting there saying, okay, we selected this kid. He's gone out. He's got some experience. We've seen some really good things. We feel pretty positive about this. And, so it's going to be a Davis Mills offseason for them. For Deshaun, January, this is the month, okay? This is it, because we should hear by the end of this month, one way or another, what's going to happen with the grand jury. And I truly believe one of the biggest barriers remaining is to find out if a grand jury is going to force him to plead to something or not. If the grand jury comes back with what's called the no bill, which is just like, hey, we don't see the evidence here to force him to plead to an indictment, you're indict him on charges and force him to plea. I think NFL teams are going to look at that and go, okay, well, criminally, nothing came out of the other end. So, okay, well, how do we feel about this? Civilly, let's figure out where he is civilly. And I think teams would be, they would be a little less reticent to take on the civil nature of what's going on if criminally Russell Wilson and his representation can then go out and say, hey, look, we went through the criminal process. Rusty Harden come out and say, hey, we went through the criminal process. Nothing happened. We've said all along he's innocent. The grand jury didn't find anything to say he's not innocent. So we're moving forward. But again, for the Texans, they feel really good about Davis Mills in that building.
Once upon a time, the Eagles were kind of lurking around that situation. I want to talk about the Eagles before we let you go. The scene at FedEx Field yesterday. If Jalen Hurts is not as nimble, or happened to be walking a couple of steps to his left, that's the story, not Antonio Brown, that's dominating television, radio, and the internet today, is how a stadium that's as shitty as the owner, not quite, but close, nearly crippled the franchise quarterback of a team, by the way, going back to coaches, and because early in the year it looked like they had really missed on Nick Sirianni. They couldn't run the ball to save them. They wouldn't run the ball. Now they run the ball like nobody else in the league, and they're about to get Miles Sanders back for the playoffs. The Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts' Philadelphia Eagles, are going to the playoffs, and Howie Roseman has 3 first-round picks next year. So thankfully, nobody was injured. Neither the fans nor the quarterback were injured. And Jalen Hurts, being as cool as he always is, took pictures. But in the bigger picture, Charles, who's sitting prettier than the Philadelphia Eagles? Going to the playoffs dangerously with 3 first-round picks next year.
And not only that, they had a really good read on this team. I went through there in training camp, and I sat with a couple of their executives, and I distinctly remember, Howie Roseman was like, look, this season, if we get really good offensive line play, if we get really good defensive line play, we're going to be over the 500 line. We're going to be a team that can compete and get ourselves into the playoffs. If we don't get those, we don't get the line play. Like he literally distilled it. He didn't say anything about the quarterback. He distilled it down to their line play and said, we're going to be under 500. We're probably going to miss the playoffs. It's exactly what's happened. As you said, they've been able to run the football. They've gotten some good line play. It has helped them, tremendously. Jalen Hurts has, he's taken some lumps this season, but I think overall it's been a good season of growth for them. And, they got themselves through some salary cap hell too. Let's not forget that. This is a team that, was not in a great salary cap position, and now they have assets. Crazy. It's a good-looking team, They really are. And I'll tell you what, man, I tweeted this as a joke about, Dan Snyder. By the rate this is going, Dan Snyder is going to have half of Manhattan on retainer. But, seriously, that situation with those fans that is insane. I mean, you don't know. Right. A lot of those fans, they pancaked it. Some people hit their head. You don't know. That could have been a complete catastrophe. But I will say this, not to make light of it, but if you show the reverse angle, you see, not this, but the opposite angle, you get, there's a cameraman at one point who's kicking a guy who's laying down. He's kicking at a guy. And then you have another person who apparently fell out of the stands, but wanders into the frame wearing an Eagles helmet. So there's a lot in this video. Oh, and by the way,
wow, it's a lot going on. This guy knows this way, this guy's going that way, this guy's like, what do you want from me? Jalen Hurts just said, hey, let's just take a picture.
And if you pay close attention to the background, all the women who fell out of the stands are being smart, and they're getting back in. They're climbing back into the stands, while all the men are like, "Oh, Jalen, let me take a picture with you." It's a lot going on in that piece.
There's a lot, and there's a lot going on in Philly right now.
With the kick.
Hey,
it's definitely a Philly cameraman, right?
Hey,
why are you trying to kick somebody?
You can't go a day without mentioning COVID. Roughly a dozen Eagles players, including Fletcher Cox, Dallas Goedert, and Jason Kelce, tested positive for COVID-19. Today, they have a chance to be cleared for Saturday's game against the Cowboys. All right, Charles Robinson, we appreciate you, brother. Thank you for dropping by.
By the way, Mike, I think Fletcher Cox is coming on the show. I think Fletcher's coming on tomorrow.
This was the right time to do it. Okay. At least if you make sure where you are in the playoffs. Then don't do the Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Don't do the Kirk Cousins absolute wrong time. Okay.
We should get him on.
All right, man. Be good. Later.
All right, Charles.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.